Ireland's west coast, a tapestry of emerald hills, sculpted cliffs, and endless stretches of sandy beaches. A place of breathtaking beauty, raw and untamed. But as you gaze upon this magnificent landscape, a question arises: where is everyone? This seemingly untouched paradise seems to hold its secrets close. Why are there so few people calling this magical place home? Let's delve into the fascinating history and geography that shape the west coast of Ireland, and explore the reasons behind its unique character. Historical factors. To understand the current population distribution, we have to rewind the clock a few centuries. The story begins with the arrival of English settlers in Ireland. Due to its closer proximity to England, the east coast naturally became the more accessible landing point. This geographical advantage made it a prime location for establishing settlements. Fertile land, calmer waters, and a shorter journey across the Irish Sea all contributed to the East Coast's early development. Towns and cities sprouted, trade flourished, and the seeds of a more concentrated population were sown. Meanwhile, the West Coast, with its rugged terrain and unpredictable weather, presented a different set of challenges. The journey here was longer and more treacherous, and the land itself less forgiving. This, as we'll see, would have a lasting impact on the course of Irish history. As the story unfolds, another key factor emerges: the rise of Dublin. With its strategic location on the east coast, Dublin was chosen as the administrative and military center of English rule in Ireland. This decision wasn't just symbolic. Dublin became the seat of power, attracting officials, merchants, and soldiers. This influx of people and resources further fueled the East Coast's development, creating a self-reinforcing cycle of growth. Meanwhile, the West Coast remained largely rural and isolated from the centers of power and economic activity. Dublin's rise as the administrative and military hub solidified the East's dominance. Resources, infrastructure, and people were all concentrated in the East, leaving the West Coast in a relative state of underdevelopment. This historical legacy continues to shape the population distribution of Ireland today. It's important to note that even before English colonization, the East Coast held some advantages. Viking raiders, who arrived in Ireland centuries earlier, also tended to establish their initial settlements on the East Coast, drawn by similar factors like calmer waters and easier access. While Viking influence eventually spread across Ireland, their initial focus on the East Coast further contributed to the region's head start in terms of development. The West Coast, with its wild beauty and harsh realities, remains somewhat on the margins of history. But as we'll see, this doesn't diminish its unique character or the reasons some choose to call it home. As we delve deeper into the reasons for the West Coast's sparse population, geography takes center stage. Unlike the East Coast's gentle rolling plains, the West boasts a landscape both beautiful and unforgiving. The land here is less fertile compared to the East. Farming becomes a constant battle against the elements. Imagine trying to cultivate crops on these windswept hillsides, where every inch of usable land has to be fought for. The strong Atlantic winds and unpredictable weather patterns add another layer of difficulty. Just when you think you might have a good season, a sudden storm can wipe out your crops and leave you starting from scratch. The challenges don't end there. Sparse natural resources in some areas further limit the opportunities for a comfortable life. Building materials, readily available in other parts of Ireland, can be scarce here. Perhaps the question isn't why there are so few people in the west coast of Ireland, but why anyone would choose to live in such a demanding environment. The answer might surprise you. Let's now turn our attention to the East Coast, where geography offered a stark contrast to the West. The calm waters of the Irish Sea provided a significant advantage. Trade and transport flourished here, with ships able to navigate with relative ease. Imagine the difference. While the West Coast battled unpredictable Atlantic weather, the East Coast enjoyed a more sheltered environment. This allowed for the development of safe harbors, essential for establishing thriving ports and trade centers. The East Coast's geography, with its calmer waters and sheltered harbors, facilitated trade and development. This advantage, coupled with the challenges of the West Coast, fueled a population imbalance that persists to this day. The East Coast's advantages weren't just about trade. The ability to establish thriving ports and transport hubs led to the growth of major cities, further attracting people and resources. The West Coast, however, remained largely rural and isolated. But does this mean the West Coast has nothing to offer? Absolutely not. As we'll see, the West Coast's unique beauty and challenges have fostered a different kind of appeal, one that continues to draw people in unexpected ways. Our story takes a tragic turn as we approach the mid-19th century. A shadow falls upon Ireland in the form of the Great Famine, a period of devastating starvation that would forever alter the demographic landscape. The culprit, a disease called potato blight. This blight swept across Ireland, destroying potato crops, the main food source for a large portion of the population, especially in the West. The West Coast, with its heavy reliance on potatoes, was particularly vulnerable. The famine caused widespread starvation and disease. Families who had once enjoyed a simple meal of potatoes now faced a terrifying struggle for survival. With no other options, many were forced to make a heartbreaking decision: leave their homeland in search of a better life. Millions emigrated, primarily to North America, in a desperate attempt to escape the clutches of famine. This mass emigration, particularly from the West Coast, further reduced the population density in the region. The scars of the famine are still felt in Ireland today, and its impact on population distribution remains undeniable. The Great Famine stands as a stark reminder of the West Coast's vulnerability and the high price its people paid for their dependence on a single food source. The story of the West Coast isn't just one of hardship and isolation. There's a growing appreciation for the unique beauty, the slower pace of life, and the rich cultural heritage that this region offers. But who are the people who choose to call this place home? The West Coast may not offer the bustling energy of major cities, but it offers something else: a chance to reconnect with nature, a slower pace that allows you to appreciate the simple things. And with the rise of remote work opportunities, this lifestyle is becoming increasingly possible. Technology is changing the game. With the ability to work remotely, people are no longer tethered to city centers. The West Coast, with its lower cost of living and abundance of natural beauty, could become an attractive option for many, and governments are starting to take notice. Initiatives are being developed to support development in rural areas, making them more attractive places to live and work. Perhaps the future of the West Coast isn't just about resilience, but about a new kind of growth, one that respects its unique character and draws people in search of a different kind of life. Is a population shift to the West Coast inevitable, or will the East Coast's dominance remain unchallenged? The East Coast, with its established economy, vibrant city life, and wider range of job opportunities, will likely continue to be a major draw. The choice between the East and West Coast comes down to individual priorities. Do you crave the energy and opportunities of a city, or are you drawn to a simpler life surrounded by nature? If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to give your thoughts and opinions on whether you believe the West Coast of Ireland will experience a demographic transition and more people will relocate there. Thank you for watching.